House will please be in order. Those not having the privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber. Members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer today by Tom Rowan, husband of the lady from the 52nd, Delegate Rowan.
Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Most gracious God, our Heavenly Father, I ask your blessing upon the members of this house. I pray that you would guide each of their voices and their votes, that they might be in the best interest of all of the citizens of the great state of West Virginia. This I pray in your gracious holy name, now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the lady from the 39th, Delegate Malcolm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the delegates and the staff and all the guests in the galleries join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019.
Gentleman from the 40th, Delegate Jeffries.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Gentleman from the 40th, ask unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears no objection, so ordered. Introduction to guests. Gentleman from the 23rd, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today with us in the gallery, well, I've got several people from Boone County, so bear with me. We have Brandy Reese from the YWCA Family Resolve Program. We also have pages with us today from Van Middle School. We have Hope Gallman, Madison Allen, Emma Wilcox, Allison Price. They're escorted by Reverend Tom Price, Misty and Todd Price, Melanie Harper Allen, and Sean Smith. Also, we have from Van High School, Alex Mullins, Delaney Maynard, Carly LaFouch, and Kinsley White, who is escorted by the resident Santa Claus for the area, Rusty Mullins. If they would all stand to be recognized and the House make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 7th, Delegate Harshbarger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have a guest from Harrisville, West Virginia, and Ritchie County, up in the North Gallery, Mayor Alan Hott. He's been involved as mayor, our Economic Development Council, Rural Water Association, so he's very active in our community. I just appreciate the House giving him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 53rd, Delegate Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I'd like to recognize members of the West Virginia Athletic Trainers Association who are with us today in the gallery. Their names are Hannah Lockery, she's from Preston County, and Haley Oliphant. And their school is West Liberty University and West Virginia University. If they would stand and everyone make them a welcome.
Gentleman from the 14th, Delegate Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us from Hurricane High School in the page program, we have Dawson Haddix, if Dawson would stand, and his mom is with us, Michelle Haddix. Would the House please make them welcome?
Gentleman from the 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the delegates from Kanawha County, Boone County, and Clay County, I would like to welcome representatives from the YWCA Resolve Family Abuse Program. Please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 19th, Delegate Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of all the delegates from Wayne County, I'd like to welcome 4 pages from Cerrito Canova Elementary. They're with us today. Those pages are Parker Acord, Bella Clark, Abe Knoll, and Braylon Scarberry. House, please make them welcome.
Gentleman 26, Delegate Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome a dear friend, a science teacher from the Lincoln County area, Bill McLeod, and his wife, Julie, are in the gallery somewhere. Would the House make them feel welcome?
Gentleman from the 19th, Delegate Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Hicks, we have 2 pages from Wayne High School. If they would stand, they are Emily Osborne and Kirsten Stroud. We also have some members of the Wayne County and Cabell County Education Association in the South Gallery. Among them are Amanda Lusher, April Wallace, Nancy Knoll, and Joanne Porter. If they would please rise and everybody give them a round of applause as well.
Children from the 17th, Delegate Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Also in the West Gallery, we have Cabell County teachers and CCEA members Vera Miller and Brett Masters, if they could stand and be recognized.
Lady from the 51st, Delegate Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 groups I want to introduce today. One of the groups is the West Virginia Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the state president, Lacey Davidson, is here today. Would she please stand? And she is accompanied by 10 nutrition students from Marshall University. Would they also please stand? And would the House please make them welcome?
Lady from the 3rd, Delegate Storch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery to my left, I see David Hanna, who is a professor with West Liberty University, and his students. I'd like to ask them to stand, and the House please make them welcome. Thank you.
Children from the 45th, Delegate Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have like to welcome some students from the Athletic Training Department at West Virginia Wesleyan College, Jess Cleansing, Jacob Hanshaw, and Kristen Campbell. Please make them welcome.
Children from the 42nd, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Lavender Bow and myself and our South Gallery, we would like to welcome today a member of the West Virginia Athletic Trainers Association from Greenbrier Valley Physical Therapy, covering our Greenbrier East High School Spartans. Please welcome Nick Daly.
Lady from the 42nd, Delegate Lavender Bow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Campbell, I'd like to recognize representatives from the Family Refuge Center of Lewisburg. They're working today to raise awareness for domestic violence and sexual assault. Please make welcome Stephanie Keys, Deneen Fair, and Laura Martin. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to introduce some friends we have from the Athletic Trainers Association. We have the Marshall Sports Medicine Institute. We have Andrew DeMoss, Aaron Wingate, and Kevin Burton. House, please make them feel welcome.
Lady from the 51st, Delegate Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today's Domestic Violence Awareness Day, and we, on behalf of the delegation from the 51st and the 49th, I would like to 5 people to stand that are here from our local regional rape and domestic violence information center and our child advocacy center. Alexia Jennings, Galliana Palma, Deanna Hogue, Beverly Kelly, Deanna Lindsay, and Mariah Martin. Would they please stand, and would the House make them welcome?
Gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Lincoln County delegation, we have with us today, paging, Aiden McLeod, if he would please stand, and he is escorted by his parents, William and Julie McLeod. If they would please stand, and will the House please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 61st, Delegate Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today from the Eastern Panhandle Empowerment Center are Katie Spriggs, Nicole Rome, and Jenna Hyde. If they would please stand in the House and make them welcome.
Gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Angelucci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegates Caputo and Longstreth, I'd like to take a moment to welcome 2 wonderful ladies in the South Gallery, Ms. Petra Thompson and Michelle McCord, and I'd like to thank them for the work that they do serving victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. I'd like the House to make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 43rd, Delegate Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today with us in the South Gallery, I would like to welcome Margot Gilmore-Evick and Stacy Russell-Tenney. If you guys would please stand. They are here representing the Child and Youth Advocacy Center. They are directors. House, please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Limble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce to the House today Courtney Dilcher from Huntington Prep and St. Joe High School. Would the House make her feel welcome?
Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegates Maynard, Miller, and Evans, we also have a page here today. And when I say his name, would he stand and his parents? We have Aiden McLeod from Lincoln County and his parents, William and Julie. House, please make them feel welcome.
Are there further introductions of guests? If not, reports of standing committees.
Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 2209, allowing military veterans who meet certain qualifications to qualify for examination for license as an emergency medical technician. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended and that the second reference to the Committee on Health and Human Resources be dispensed with.
Report to be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, the two chairs have conferred on this matter, and I now ask unanimous consent that second reference of the bill to the Committee on Health and Human Resources be dispensed with.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that the second committee reference on House Bill 2209 to the Committee on Health and Human Resources be dispensed with. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection.
Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 2330, allowing honorably discharged veterans who possess certain military ratings to qualify to take an examination for licensing as a plumber, electrician, and sprinkler fitter. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Government Organization.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 2223, recognizing those in active military service as residents for the purpose of obtaining concealed carry permits while stationed at a West Virginia military installation. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 2036, permitting vehicles displaying disabled veteran special registration plates to park in places where persons with mobility impairments may park. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that the second reference Committee on Judiciary be dispensed with.
Report to be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, the two chairs have conferred on this matter, and I now ask unanimous consent that the second reference of the bill to the Committee on Judiciary be dispensed with.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that the second reference to the Committee on Judiciary for House Bill 2036 be dispensed with. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection.
Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2097 relating to the hunting of coyotes and House Bill 2518 authorizing the tracking of wounded or injured deer or bear with leashed dogs. Reports the same back with recommendation that each do pass, that they be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Report to be received. Bills both be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2396, West Virginia Fresh Food Act, and House Bill 2468, Department of Agriculture Capital Improvements Fund. Reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that each do pass as amended, that they be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Each bill be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2398, exempting all-terrain vehicles and utility terrain vehicles used as farm equipment from the sales tax. Reports the same back with recommendation that the do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Committee on Industry and Labor has had under consideration House Bill 2470, allowing public school education or employer-sponsored training programs to count towards occupational certification and or licensure. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that each do pass as amended, that they be referred to Committee on Education.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Education.
Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under under consideration House Bill 2521 relating to permitting fur-bearer parts, reports the same back with amendment, with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee on Political Subdivisions has had under consideration House Bill 2091 increasing the minimum number of magisterial districts in a county, and House Bill 2309 allowing municipalities to cancel elections when only one person is running, reports the same back with recommendation that each do pass, that they be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
Report to be received. Both bills be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2010 relating to foster care, reports the same back with amendment, with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2600 relating to publication of sample ballots, reports back Committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the Committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2547 relating to the election prohibition zone, reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
Report to be received. Further reports to standing committees, reports to select committees, messages from the executive, messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announces the passage by the Senate of Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 3, establishing West Virginia Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, then the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 62, requiring participation in drug court program before discharge of certain first-time drug offenses.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse, then the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 152, relating generally to criminal offense expungement.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 240, repealing certain legislative rules no longer authorized or are obsolete.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Further messages from the Senate. Resolutions.
House Resolution 7, commemorating the passing of the Honorable John Franklin Deem, veteran, businessman, and dedicated public servant.
Would all members and guests in the gallery please rise? Chair recognizes the lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have with us Becky Deem, wife of the Honorable J. Frank Deem, and other family members. They are escorted into the chamber by the Wood County delegation. Mr. Speaker, I now ask unanimous consent that reference of the resolution to a committee be dispensed with and that it be taken up for immediate consideration and put upon its adoption.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that committee reference of the resolution be dispensed with, that it be taken up for immediate consideration and put upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. Reference will be dispensed with. The clerk will please read the resolution.
Whereas, on Thursday, October 18th, 2018, the City of Parkersburg, the County of Wood, the State of West Virginia, and the West Virginia Legislature suffered the loss of an outstanding public servant with the passing of the Honorable John Franklin Deem. John Franklin Deem was born on March 20th, 1928 in Harrisville, West Virginia, the son of Fulton S. Deem and Lila Matheny Deem. Known throughout his life as Frank, he graduated from Harrisville High School, attended Mountain State Business College, West Virginia University, and graduated with a degree in petroleum engineering from Marietta College. Frank firmly believed in serving his state and country and served in the United States Navy during World War II. His compassion and concern for the welfare of the citizens of West Virginia were exemplified by his service in the West Virginia Legislature in both the House of Delegates and State Senate in every decade from the 1950s to 2018. Frank Deem was a successful businessman who owned Frank Deem's Market in Harrisville and Frank Deem Chevrolet in St. Mary's, and he was the owner and operator of J.F. Deem Oil and Gas for more than 50 years. In addition to his public service, Frank was also a member of numerous civic, social, and public service organizations, including the Parkersburg Rotary Club, Parkersburg Country Club, Sons of the American Revolution, Independent Oil and Gas Association, West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association, United States Golf Association, and the West Virginia University at Parkersburg Foundation. Frank gave generously of his time to his community as a supporter of the Ritchie County Golf Program, the Boys and Girls Club of Parkersburg, the Parkersburg Arts Center, and the West Virginia Symphony. He also supported education and was responsible for improvements to school grounds throughout the county. While Frank Deem accomplished much in his life, he was perhaps most proud that he designed and built North Bend Golf Course in Harrisville. A voracious reader, Frank subscribed to and clipped and saved articles from many publications. He was also outspoken and not shy about sharing his thoughts with the editors of West Virginia's newspapers and was a regular contributor to the opinion page. Frank traveled extensively and was known to enjoy a cocktail from time to time. Frank is survived by his wife, Rebecca Llewellyn Deem, and 6 children, Debbie Basham, Pam Howard, Patty Snodgrass, Mike Deem, Katie Coatney, John Deem, and 2 stepchildren, Zachary Wilson and Catherine Schumann, as well as numerous grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Through his years of public service, Frank Deem touched and enriched many lives, and those who had the opportunity to know and work with him were truly fortunate. He devoted many hours to serving his constituents, his district, his state, and its citizens. His colleagues at the legislature will greatly miss his character, experience, and statesmanship, and it is most fitting that we honor his memory. Therefore, be it resolved by the House of Delegates of the West Virginia Legislature that deepest regret and sorrow are hereby expressed by the members of this body at the passing of John Franklin Deem, veteran, businessman, dedicated public servant, and friend. And be it further resolved that the Clerk of the House of Delegates forward a copy of this resolution to the family of the Honorable John Franklin Deem.
The question before the House is the adoption of the resolution. A roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. The question is, shall the resolution be adopted? The clerk will prepare the machine. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will record those delegates in the well of the chamber as voting aye on adoption of the resolution. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 100 ayes, 0 nays, 0 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those members present having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the resolution adopted. House will please be at ease while the chair presents the resolution. Members and guests may be seated. Are there further resolutions? Petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 2607 relating to the licensure of nursing homes.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and they be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as been having formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection, so ordered. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2095, assessing the college and career readiness of 11th and 12th grade students.
Gentleman from the 48th, Delegate Hamrick, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill removes the requirement for schools to reassess a student's college readiness following the 12th grade transition course using a standardized comprehensive assessment. Schools may give periodic examinations of students' progress, but may not require the students to retake the college and career ready examination administered in the 11th grade or any other examination-based assessment of college and career readiness. The bill also permits institutions of higher education to use other information on academic achievement and readiness along with high school assessment data for appropriate placement in college courses. The bill allows the colleges and universities to look at multiple measures for placement and reduces repetitive testing. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, 100 ayes, 0 nays, 0 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those members present having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2095.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2193, providing a specificus cheat of U.S. savings bonds.
Gentleman from 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. This bill was amended yesterday, so I hope you'll recall some of the explanation that was given yesterday. Basically, U.S. savings bonds bear interest for a certain period of time, and it's not an indefinite period of time. Each bond is issued with a maturity date. This bill addresses the problem that redemption of these bonds by the Treasurer through the Unclaimed Property Act is not possible due to the United States Treasury's insistence that title to the bond actually be shown to be in the Treasurer when redemption is sought. So what the bill basically does is provide a method by which the Treasurer can obtain legal title to the bond in order to redeem it, incorporate it with other unclaimed property in the system, and then it can be subject to reclaiming by the individual who might be entitled to it. Essentially, it establishes a presumption that 5 years after the maturity of that bond, in other words, 5 years after it stopped earning interest, there is a presumption that it is abandoned. Then at least a year later, the Treasurer can file an action by which he notifies the last known, or notifies the person at the last known address of that person who had that bond registered in his or her name. And there's a procedure that allows that person to come forward, or the heirs of that person, anybody that has an interest, to claim title to the bond and then pursue redemption of that bond themselves. However, if that title cannot be, or that claim cannot be sustained, then the property, essentially the title to it, is transferred by operation of law to the Treasurer, who then redeems the bond from the United States Treasury and incorporates those proceeds in the other unclaimed property. There's also a procedure, though, in the Unclaimed Property Act for those proceeds to be claimed at a later time by individuals who learn at that point that they have an interest in that property. So the Treasurer has notified us that they already have in its possession about $500,000 of these bonds that are of no benefit to anyone. If you think of a bond, it's not like It's not like currency. It's more like an IOU. In other words, you can't just take a bond and buy a hamburger with it or anything. So you have to redeem it, and the Treasury basically requires title in order to do that. This is simply a method by which we can convert those unused bonds, those bonds that aren't of any benefit to any West Virginia resident, into unclaimed property that then, or at least allow the person the opportunity to claim them from the Treasurer. We also learned that there might be millions of dollars of these that the Treasurer isn't even aware of. So this might also establish a process to identify those bonds that are registered, or their last registration was in the name of a West Virginia resident, and convert them into some property that can actually be useful to the citizens of the state. That's basically an explanation of the bill. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 55th, Delegate Spinagle.
Will the chairman yield for some questions?
Chairman does yield.
Certainly.
So these savings bonds are typically what, Class A to Class EE bonds? Is that what the intent of the legislation is?
There are a number of different series of bonds. This would cover any and all series that have been issued.
So they, for example, let me give an example. My grandfather used to give me like $50 savings bonds for a birthday present or Christmas, and I don't know, they would range anywhere from 30 to 40 years. Those are the type of bonds that we're sitting here talking about in this action. Is that correct?
If you haven't, if those bonds have been turned over, let's suppose they were left in a safe deposit box, perhaps not yours, but maybe your grandfather's, and the bank turns them over to the treasurer. Treasurer can't do anything with them and maybe not even be able to notify you initially. So this establishes a process by which those bonds could be converted into unclaimed property, then subject to reclaim by heirs and so forth through the normal process that the Treasurer uses for unclaimed property.
And it's my understanding that the concern, or I guess the issue is, there was a Kansas court case where the United States Treasury is basically sitting on $14 to $16 billion of unclaimed savings bonds in the United States. And they are holding it, not wanting to disperse those monies back to the states. Is that what this is attempting to do?
I believe Kansas was the pioneer in this effort, yes.
Okay. And the way, I don't necessarily have a problem with the intent of the bill. I guess the issue that I know I have some that are past maturity bonds, and I know I have some that are not. And so if it's 5 years after maturity, then immediately the state of West Virginia is grabbing my savings bonds and holding them and putting them through unclaimed property.
Not without a due process hearing in court. They have to go to the Kanawha County Circuit Court, notify whomever is the registered owner. Well, first of all, in your case, they probably would never have possession of those bonds to begin with, and probably have no knowledge of their existence, because the registration is in the United States Treasury, not with the West Virginia Treasury.
Well, I had an opportunity, because I was asking the Treasurer yesterday, or Assistant Treasurer on this, and they didn't take a position on this bill, primarily because of the 5 year after maturity. It's their understanding that the Treasury has everybody's name, Social Security numbers, who's on these bonds, so they can get that information if they wanted to. There's going to be we're talking over $100 million worth of U.S. savings bonds in West Virginia. I mean, who's paying for the court costs and the filing actions to go after $100 million in the Kanawha Circuit Court?
The provision in the bill allows the Treasurer, if he is able to successfully obtain title of those bonds and redeem them from the U.S. Treasury, to offset any costs associated with that and then deposit the net proceeds into the unclaimed property fund.
So if I have a $500 savings bond, for example, after court costs, I'm not going to get anything.
Well, you would be, if it was in your name, you'd be notified before that subsequent redemption through the court hearing.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, the bill.
Proceed.
And I appreciate the chairman doing this. The issue that I take with this bill, and I think this is a bad bill, and I think you're all going to get a lot of telephone calls on this bill, is it's 5 years after maturity. Not when you're dead, and not when the bonds are placed over, they can't find the holder of it. The Treasurer has about $450,000 worth of Treasury bonds, but they go in when people die and they go in unclaimed property, they go to the banks and they draw out these safety deposit boxes and they have these bonds. They're the holder, they're not the owners of it, they just have possession of it. So to get ownership of it, This legislation is going to act and say every bond in the state of West Virginia 5 years after maturity, the state of West Virginia now owns. That's cheap. That's the document that we're using. I looked up at the definition of a cheat, so I remember it from law school. That's cheat. The reversion of property to the state or in feudal law to a lord on the owner's dying without legal heirs. Revert to a lord by the state of a cheat. Then shortly after that, we dropped the ES, which we use today and call cheat. The government takes your property. That word got shortened to cheat. That's what we use normally. So the issue that you're going to run into is if I have savings bonds, which I do, and I'm having to come down here to court rather than just going to the U.S. Treasury and cash them out, that's awful. Now, if you were dead and it was after probate and you're trying to liquidate the monies and get it to unclaimed property and get it down through to get out of U.S. Treasury, that makes sense. But that 5 years after maturity date, you guys are going to get calls. You are going to get complaints. And you know what you're going to tell them? I voted to cheat you out of your U.S. savings bonds, and now you're getting ripped off court cost. So the intent of it's good. It's just the measuring time period, 5 years after maturity, and then 1 year after that. I think that's going to cause a lot of headaches for the folks in here. Even though the intent, I believe the intent's clear, because the only way to get that money out of the U.S. Treasury is ultimately to get the ownership to the state. But the person should be dead at least. I shouldn't be alive and have to go through the unclaimed property to get my savings bonds. So that issue is going to cause headaches. I think it's a bad bill, and I'm going to be voting no.
Lady from the third, Douglas Storch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman continue to yield?
Chairman does yield.
Certainly.
Thank you. I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and the genesis of where I get conflicted is I had a situation where I got notification through the treasurer's office through unclaimed property that I had 4 unclaimed properties submitted to them. And I, like the gentleman from the 55th, have several savings bonds that I haven't cashed in or whatever yet. But I'm thinking every time one of these, and I don't know where their maturity dates are because they vary, as you know, from duration, from nominal 12 years at one point to 18 and whatever. So my concern is that, like I said, I just recently received 4 notifications of unclaimed property. I haven't moved. My email address hasn't changed, and I think I'm pretty accessible in the state. Every constituent can find me, but apparently whomever had these monies to turn over to the state treasurer never were able to locate me, I guess, because they went into the unclaimed property. But my question is, how is the tax consequence going to be handled? Because there is a tax consequence, because when you purchase the bonds, if you purchase a $500 bond, you purchase it at $250. You purchase a $100 bond, it's purchased at $50. So that appreciation is normally, and that's honestly why I haven't cashed many of my bonds, my children's bonds, because my children can cash their bonds when they're on their own dime and their own tax returns. So how is that appreciation going to be handled for the tax consequence that would be subsequent to come?
Okay, well, first of all, let me admit that I know enough tax law to be dangerous, okay? My understanding, first of all, I don't think U.S. savings bonds, the interest earned, are subject to West Virginia tax, so I think that's not an issue. The question is whether it's subject to any income tax. I assume that there would be and I'm not certain of this, okay? I assume that if you redeem that bond through the Treasury, you would have to report the income that's earned over and above what the cost of that bond was. I'm assuming that's correct, unless there's some exception or exclusion in the tax law for interest on U.S. savings bonds. I don't know the answer to that. So it wouldn't change by virtue of this bill. What would happen, let's suppose somehow the treasurer of this state became aware of one of your bonds and it was over 5 years past maturity, and then a year later they brought an action in Kanawha County Circuit Court. If you came forward, you would be entitled to that bond. There would be no cost assessed to you. The cost is only assessed if the treasurer basically obtains title to the bond and then redeems the bond from the treasurer, U.S. treasurer, then any cost associated with that. So in the gentleman the gentleman's earlier example, if he appeared at the circuit court level when the due process hearing was held, there would not be any, he would not bear any cost to that. He would just establish his claim. In all likelihood, the treasurer wouldn't pursue that if they were aware, if the bond is in his name and he was notified. There wouldn't be any the problem comes when you've got generational gaps or heirs that are not the same as named as the same person that's issued the bond. That's where often the problem comes, or if somebody simply leaves it in a safe deposit box that they abandon, and then the bank turns it over to the state treasurer, and it becomes unclaimed property, but they can't do anything with it because of this title issue. So I don't think that the bill itself would change any tax effect on your part. Let's suppose you went through this process and you claimed the bond and then redeemed it yourself. That it wouldn't be any different there. There wouldn't be any difference in the tax consequence whether it went through this process or not. I guess theoretically, if there is a tax consequence, it would come up if the treasurer actually had to redeem it and deducted a piece, whatever the cost of redeeming it would be, and you got the net proceeds, then I would assume you wouldn't be responsible for any tax on the cost that went to the treasurer. But that's the only way I could see any possible change. There may be somebody here that's an accountant that can give you a better answer to that, but that's the best I can do.
So I guess, and maybe I'm not understanding exactly the transaction, but so the treasurer would assume ownership, and then if I would present my certificate, I would assume ownership of that certificate and that property, or would I submit to the state treasurer paperwork similar to their current unclaimed property? And that's where I would think that the potential for the tax consequence would come in, because if I have a $500 savings bond and I would present my $500 savings bond certificate, are they going to say, yes, you're the owner, you can now redeem your bond? Or through unclaimed property, am I going to have to go through the process of the paperwork and the treasurer remit to me the $500 proceeds that they have assumed in unclaimed property?
I assume what would happen, if you still have possession of the certificate, the bond, then I don't know how the treasurer would ever have anything in its possession to proceed under, okay? Right. The problem comes if they've actually, in this case, they've got about $500,000 of possession of the certificates. So that's the immediate issue. What gets a little bit complicated in the future is, my understanding is they don't issue certificates anymore. It's all an electronic registration. You actually buy it online. That becomes a little more complicated, but I don't think that's the issue that the treasurer's immediately concerned about. It's the bonds that are already in their possession. My understanding is, under this litigation that Kansas has initiated, is that there's some effort to identify these electronic registrations and determine if those people still are in possession of the evidence of the ownership of those bonds. But if you have the certificate, I can't imagine a situation where the treasurer would attempt to even initiate the first step of the process. It's just they have physical possession of these certificates now, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Gentleman, you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just a simple question for a guy who's kind of simple about some of these things. Several years ago, I bought savings bonds for my children. Those bonds have probably laid dormant in a safety deposit box or a drawer or somewhere for some 30 years. With the passage of this bill, very simply, are we creating an avenue for the state of West Virginia to lay claim to those bonds?
No, we're not. We're not. If they would obtain, let's suppose those bonds were in somebody else's safe deposit box, and those bonds were turned over to the treasurer because they were not claimed by the owner of that box, or the owner of that box was not located, then this would provide, pardon me, an avenue by which the treasurer could convert those bonds into cash that then would be handled just like any other unclaimed property. In other words, if there were cash in that savings, in that safe deposit box and bonds, obviously the cash would be held in the unclaimed property process, subject to being reclaimed, and I'm sure you're familiar with the way they advertise and so forth and notify people. But they can't do anything with the bonds at this point. Now, if they wanted to proceed against those bonds, then what they would do is, depending on who the registration was in your case, the grandchild, then they would notify the grandchild that there's an with with title to those bonds, and the grandchild would then be able to come forward and claim the bond through that process without the treasurer having to go forward and redeem it, and then your grandchild would have the ability to redeem the bond themselves. Keep in mind, they've stopped earning interest, so it's really you're just giving the government your money, so it's in your best interest to proceed and have those bonds redeemed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's still just clear as mud.
Well, the answer to the question is no, it would not provide a method for them to get those bonds, but if they became unclaimed at some point and possession of those bonds went to the treasurer, then yes, it would provide a way for them to convert them into cash and then proceed just like they're any other unclaimed property.
Thank you.
Hopefully that helps.
Lady from the 49th, Delegate Summers.
Would the chairman yield?
Yes.
I apologize. I had my light on. I think he answered the question. You said the only way that this would occur is if they had possession of them, not if you have possession of them.
Yeah, if you have possession, they'd have no way of knowing about the bond because they're not registered with the state. Now, at some future date, they may get access to that information and then would follow up with you and say, this bond is not mature. This bond is matured. You need to do something with it. And if you ignored that, contact.
The state still could do that even though it's in my possession. I thought if it went to unclaimed property, then they could do that if it was after 5 years of the maturity date.
And that's the situation currently. I'm just speculating as to what could happen in the future if they do not have the knowledge of your bond right now. And unless they have the possession of that bond, they can't do anything with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The gentleman from the 32nd, Delegate Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apologize for my froggy throat. I rise in support of the bill to maybe address some of the concerns that have been raised. Those were concerns that were raised in judiciary when we debated this bill. The question came up, you know, if Grandpa has a drawer full of U.S. savings bonds, are they just going to automatically escheat to the state of West Virginia? Or if my mother bought my grandmother a U.S. savings bond and my daughter doesn't even know that it has matured, could that savings bond escheat to the state of West Virginia automatically? The way the bill was originally written, it had an automatic escheatment, and then there was a civil action to basically confirm escheatment. And escheatment is the trigger here because once it has escheated, then the ownership changes from the owner to the state. But the amendment that was passed by this body yesterday on second reading, first of all, the bond has to mature. Second of all, it's 1 year after that. Third, then a civil action, this is before escheatment, then a civil action must be filed by the treasurer, and that's either in Circuit Court of Kanawha County or a Circuit Court of competent jurisdiction. And at that proceeding, there's a section in the bill here that says notice must be provided under Rule 4 of the Rules of Civil Procedure. And if you read that rule, it's rather comprehensive. If you know the true owner of the bond, you have to give them notice. If they're a minor, then a guardian ad litem would have to be appointed. If they're not a minor, and if you can't find the person, then it has to be by general circulation in the last known address where the person lived, a publication. So, and at that court proceeding, if the court is then satisfied that all the law has been followed, and no one shows up and claims the bond, then the court can award the treasurer escheatment, a judgment of escheatment. Then the ownership changes place. But that's not the end of the story then for the true owner of the bond. Once escheatment takes place, then the treasurer can redeem the bond. That still doesn't mean the true owner is out completely. The treasurer can then redeem the bond and basically convert it into cash. So then, once it's redeemed, then the money goes into the unclaimed property fund, just like any other money in the unclaimed property fund. And once that money is there, it's still not the end for the true owner of the bond. If, and it talks about 36, 8, 15, and 16. Those code sections refer to the unclaimed property fund and unclaimed property in the state of West Virginia. And that's where a person who has a rightful claim can approach the treasurer and say, hey, this is my money. And without a civil action, the treasurer can release that money if the treasurer is satisfied, yep, that's the right person. Can release the money. Of course, the bond at this point is already redeemed. It's converted into cash, so the treasurer can release the money, less the expenses involved in all the proceedings up to this point. However, if the money is not redeemed at that point, then the money can eventually, if you read the code sections, can eventually end up in the general revenue fund. And at that point, I would say the money is gone from the true owner. So there's, I believe, and the chairman correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the scheme that is set forth in this bill with the amendment that we filed yesterday. So it's going to take a lot of procrastination on the part of the true owner, and that would involve an heir. If the true owner died, the heirs, the rightful heirs, could then stand in the shoes of the true owner and make their claim. So it takes a lot of procrastination on the part of the true owners, and it takes a lot of diligence on part of the treasurer to get to this point. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I would support the bill.
Gentleman 30th, Delegate Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. My question relates to the 5-year period. How was that determined? Was it, what discussion, what thought went into 5 years as opposed to a longer term?
I think it's basically an arbitrary selection of numbers. It
Was there any consideration?
Too early or too late. I don't know what. I think basically the statute was modeled after what was done in Kansas, and I believe the 5-year period models this Kansas statute. But whether it could have been 4 or 7, it could have been any number.
Was there any consideration, committee, of maybe a longer standard, 10, 20, make sure these things are really abandoned, unclaimed, as opposed to just kind of neglected, which I think was what most people do. You sort of get them, you forget about them, and you still have them, but you never get around to doing anything with them?
Well, I think, first of all, the perception that it's going to affect everybody that owns a bond is misplaced. I think we're really focused on a situation where the treasurer has about $500,000 of these things that are laying there that aren't earning any interest and are not of any benefit to anybody. The treasurer needs a method by which to convert those to unclaimed property. The statute basically provides at least 2 steps for someone who inadvertently loses possession of their bond to reclaim that bond without losing any money. The first one would be notified by the treasurer before any step towards escheatment or transfer of title, and that's through a circuit court action. And then if the person comes forward at that point and says, somehow or another this bond got lost in the shuffle, but it's mine, then they can redeem it themselves, and maybe it'll have a beneficial benefit to that of, my money's out there without anybody paying me any interest. The sooner I get my hands on it, the sooner I can earn interest on it.
Okay, so this is aimed at that, you said $500,000 worth of bonded activity that's currently residing in the treasurer's office.
My understanding is just under $500,000 currently Obviously, this is an
It could be
ongoing
more.
process. As the bank could send some in tomorrow and change that number, but
Thank you.
that's the number now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from 17th, Delegate Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield for a question? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple questions, actually. So if I understand right, the only way that the state would be involved in paper certificates is if the state would somehow come into physical possession of said certificates.
Yes.
Okay. So I think what we're really getting back to, I think the problem is going to be with electronic certificates, which they're all electronic now. Let's say that someone purchases an electronic savings bond and did it decades ago. So it reaches the time when it would be eligible for this. But let's say that person made a conscious tax decision, somewhat getting back to the lady from Ohio County's question. They made a conscious decision not to realize that income perhaps until they retired. But in the meantime, perhaps they had moved out of state. They'd moved to Florida, let's say. They don't get notification, but they still consider themselves the owner of said bond, and they won't get notification because we don't know their new address, and I don't believe they have to file a change of address with the Treasury. So could there be a scenario in which we are claiming someone who is a viable owner, considers themselves to be a viable owner, who's now a non-resident of the state of West Virginia, but we're claiming through this statute to take their property? So is that a possible scenario?
If you're asking me if it's 100% impossible that could happen, I can't tell you that. I don't think it would likely happen. I don't think the treasurer would be seeking out individuals who have electronic registration that they haven't claimed that bond for 5 years. That would be, unlikely under this scenario. But if you're asking me if it's possible, I guess it's possible. If that person doesn't want to earn interest on that money for whatever.
Yeah, they made a conscious decision not to earn the interest.
So for whatever reason, and we can question all day whether that's a good decision or not. If it's in a safe deposit box for 30 years without earning any interest and doesn't even keep up with the rate of inflation. But I guess you could make that decision for some reason.
Yeah, but then so this law does or does not pertain to electronic savings bonds.
It does not exclude electronic registered savings bonds, if that's what you're asking.
Does not exclude.
Does
so
not exclude
there could be a way under this where the state could find a registry of electronic registry of bonds that are no longer gaining interest, and they could start this process.
Currently, they could not, because the U.S. government does not share that registry information with the state.
Okay.
Whether that could change in the future, I mean, obviously, if we learn that could happen, we could certainly go in and modify this. You can modify legislation at any time. Currently, that couldn't happen because the state does not have possession of the registry of those electronic bonds.
So the only thing that this would pertain to at this time would be the state coming into physical possession of a bond that's not earning interest.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 62nd, Delegate Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the chairman, please. Just a clarifying question. Under current, without this bill, and U.S. savings bonds goes unclaimed, what happens to those funds? Does the U.S. Treasury then take those funds, or does the state lose out?
Think of it as an IOU. There are no funds. I mean, the credit of the United States government stands behind it, so we can debate whether that's creditworthy or not. But there aren't actually dollars that represent that bond. There's a claim to be paid the amount that bond represents plus the interest through the maturity period. Mm-hmm. But there are no funds. Otherwise, maybe we could divert those funds to build the wall. But at this point, it's just an IOU, and the government's not paying it out unless you can prove you have the bond or title to the bond.
So without this bill, then the person who owns the bonds or the heirs wouldn't receive any funds.
That's correct.
Let's just say we don't find you never find the heir, then the state where that person either last domiciled, they would lose those funds as well. Is that
essentially
am I reading
those
that right?
funds would not be of any benefit to anybody but the government, who doesn't have to, the federal government, who doesn't have to pay them out, doesn't have to recognize that debt. It's essentially a debt to the person that bought the bond. So the federal government would benefit. No one in West Virginia would benefit.
That was the question. Without this, and this is for the benefit of the citizens of West Virginia with
Correct.
this bill.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The gentleman who's 60th, Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman continue to yield? Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So if this bill passes, what is the material benefit to the apparent owner of the bonds?
I'm sorry, can you?
What is the material benefit to the apparent owner of the bond?
Well, the benefit to the person that owns the bond, if the bond is just sitting there not earning any interest, it would certainly, if the process is followed the way it's outlined here, that person, if it's registered to that person, they would get notice before the state did anything, which would give that person the opportunity to say, wait a minute, you know, it's my bond, I don't want anything done with it, I want to make a decision just to let the government not pay me any interest for 20 or 30 years. Or they may say, in my case, and I'll give you an example, my grandfather bought the bond for me when I was 6 years old, and it sat in my parents' safe deposit box until recently I had access to the box and found out that it was there. I had no idea it existed. I'm going to redeem it as soon as this legislative session is over, because I don't want to loan the government any money without them paying me interest. But this bill, if the treasurer became, let's suppose that safe deposit box was represented, the bank decided that nobody had access to it and turned the contents over to the treasurer. Well, initially it wouldn't be of any benefit to anybody until the treasurer initiated this process. But if the bond was registered to me, they would seek me out through the notice requirement, and I'd have an opportunity to go in, hey, I'd either forgotten or I didn't realize I had it, I'll take it and deal with myself.
Yes, sir. Were I to find your wallet lying on the sidewalk, would it benefit you materially more for me to call you and say I've got your wallet, or to take the money out of it, change it in for different denominations, then call you and tell you that I've got your wallet and your money?
Is this a trick question?
Yes. Okay. So the next question is, how does the implementation of the plan in this bill materially benefit the state of West Virginia?
Well, currently there's roughly $500,000 that the federal government would pay the state of West Virginia for either to distribute to the owners of the bond or to go in the general revenue fund of the state, which certainly would be a benefit to all of us.
Yes, sir. So between the time that we attempt to contact the owner of the bond to provide them the money that we receive from changing in their bond, and the time that we determine that they're not going to come and claim their money, what does the state do with the money?
Well, the state invests the money. I think every so often there's a sweep of a certain percentage of the money. I'm not totally familiar with the unclaimed property process, but I know from time to time the general revenue receives money from the unclaimed property fund when it gets to a certain level. But otherwise it's retained, and if it's cash, it's invested. And presumably the state gets a return if there's, you know, if there's a, well, it would, whatever the interest rate would be, the state on its cash investments would receive the benefit of that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman with 27th, Delegate Ellington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman, yield for another question.
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. I know you might not know this, but this goes back to what my colleague from Cabell's question on the taxes part. If the state does redeem that, is the individual responsible for the federal taxes on that during that time frame, or when they redeem it, if they reclaim it? And I could see that happen in a different tax year, and I could see the feds coming back and saying, you didn't claim this money when it was redeemed.
The title to the bond would be in the state if this process proceeds before, all the way through it, and title is transferred to the state. So I don't see how the federal government at that point can tax anybody on that interest.
Well, then if that's the case, if you redeem the unclaimed property, do you have to claim it then as interest?
If you later assert a claim for that bond and recover on it, I would assume at that time you've realized a profit the difference being the cost of the bond and what you get back. That would be my impression. I'm not a tax
Right,
accountant.
I just don't, I could see it happen in 2 tax years.
It could
The state
be.
redeems and then you get notified the next year, and then you're delinquent in claiming income in the previous year. That was my concern. Thank you, Mr.
I don't think they'd have a valid basis for assessing a tax against you until you actually got
I know,
the
but
money.
the feds have computer records of when things get redeemed, and they come back to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from the 55th, Delegate Spinagle.
Chairman, continue to yield. I just want to clarify, because I've listened to the debate over there. In the definition section of this bill, you said you have set forth United States savings bonds means property tangible or intangible in the form of savings bond issued by the United States Treasury, whether in paper form, electronic, or paperless form, along with the proceeds thereof. So it's very broad, and there's no discussion about just being exclusive possession of the treasurer.
Correct. And I think what I responded to an earlier question is the registration of these bonds is information that's not shared with the state of West Virginia. It's proprietary information with the U.S. government.
Well, let me go down on page, I guess it's the page 4, notwithstanding any section of this article. It says, government subdivision, agency, or instrument or left. All proceeds thereof shall be presumed abandoned in the state if one of 2 things happens. If the last known address of the owner of United States savings bonds is in West Virginia, and they haven't been redeemed within 5 years of maturity, then it cheats to the state of West Virginia 1 year after the presumed abandonment. So let's just say that, I don't know, I thought when I talked to the assistant treasurer yesterday, the treasurer can get that information. I think they have the ability to do it, but right now, my understanding, the problem is they have possession, the ones that you're referring to, but they don't have ownership. By passing this law, all these savings bonds, then immediately the treasurer can claim that they are the owners of it under this statute.
No, that's not correct.
Well, okay.
That's not correct. Keep in mind the amendment we passed yesterday to clarify that the process that has to be followed. There is a way the treasurer can obtain title, but there's a process that requires, there's a presumption of abandonment. That does not translate into immediate title transfer. There is a due process requirement to file an action in Kanawha County or an appropriate circuit, and notify the party who's registered in whose name the bond is registered. And if that person comes forward and establishes ownership, then there's no sheet. There's no transfer of title.
And that's my follow-up question. So West Virginia's sitting, bonds that are out for maturity are anywhere between $100 and $2 million in the state of West Virginia, they think, okay? So let's just say the treasurer has to do this, which is trying to get ownership of it. It's at least $200 a filing fee, and then the order of publication is $25, however they do it, or run it in the newspaper. And most bonds aren't for like $1 million, they're like for $500 or $1,000 or $5,000. But a lot of these accumulation of savings bonds, what type of price tag is sitting on that the state's going to have to pay to avoid the problem to begin with?
Okay, first of all, the treasurer would not file against a single bond. We've had that discussion. The treasurer, the attorney for the treasurer appeared in our committee. Part of the discussion was at what point would they pursue, and it would only be pursued if there were a large number of bonds over which you would spread the cost of the action. So in this case, perhaps with $500,000, they may proceed with this action and then spread any cost, the $200 filing fee and any other cost, among those multiple bonds. But it wouldn't be a process that they would file against your $50 savings bond or whatever. There would be an accumulation of bonds to make it worthwhile to go forward with the process and spread the cost.
The way the statute is set forth right now, though, if this passes, in essence, let's just say the state treasurer, as a result of this, can go, and the U.S. Treasury has your identification numbers, all right, for lost bonds. Let's say they get that information. They claim it. Then there would be mass litigation. They'd send out all these letters, and there would be mass litigation to pull the bonds in so they could get ownership. Is that correct? Is that the thought process, though?
Yeah, I'll have to accept your categorization of mass litigation. There would be a substantial number of bonds before they would seek to do this, according to what the attorney for the treasurer indicated us.
Yeah.
And that may be mass, it may be not mass.
Well, and as I told you before, I think The bill itself is a good idea. The 5-year maturity date, I have a lot of problems with that, and I think it's going to cause a lot of problems. So that's why I'll be voting no on.
Okay.
Does the gentleman from 27th wish to close debate?
Very briefly, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Folks, right now, $500,000 of resources of West Virginia folks are sitting idle, not earning any interest. The treasurer asked for this bill. We've sponsored this bill. We had it fully vetted in our committee. This is a piece of legislation that will allow a conversion of this money, this claim, into money that will be of benefit to the owners or to the state of West Virginia. It's certainly a statute we're relatively in the forefront among states in doing this, so obviously it will be important for the treasurer to follow what's done elsewhere, and it's certainly within our purview to follow that and to make adjustments to the statute based on circumstances. But right now, we have resources that belong to our residents that are basically useless to anybody or to the state. This bill fixes that problem. I urge its passage.
The gentleman from 27th has closed debate. For what purpose does the gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Byrd, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rule 49, my wife works for the Unclaimed Property Division under the State Treasurer's Office.
Delegate, as you have relayed the facts to the chair, you are a member of a class of greater than 5 members and you are directed to vote. The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. 72 yeas, 28 nays, 0 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2193.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please report the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2423, prohibiting certain sex offenders from being in a supervisory position over children.
Gentleman from the 15th, Delegate Foster, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2423 concerns the terms of supervised release for certain sexual offenders. Specifically, the bill prohibits these sexual offenders from playing a supervisory role over a group of children. The sexual offenses that are covered under this would be sexual offense of the first-degree sexual assault and first-degree sexual abuse. The groups of children for which the offender would be barred from a supervisory role would include, but are not limited to, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H organizations, sporting or scholastic teams, music, sporting and theater groups, camps, and summer day camps. The committee, in the Committee on Judiciary, we also adopted an amendment that included religious organizations to this list. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. 100 ayes, 0 nays, 0 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2423.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Further bills on third reading. Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2005, Broadband Expansion Act of 2019.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to move the bill to third reading with amendments pending.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that the bill be moved to third reading with the amendments pending. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection, so ordered. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2346, changing the licensing requirement for certain casino employees.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2360, placing the Athletic Commission under the Lottery Commission.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2412, relating to criminal acts concerning government procurement of commodities and services.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2422, relating to the time for the observation of Celebrate Freedom Week.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2459, exercising authority to exempt individuals domiciled within the state from certain restrictions contained in federal law.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2462, issuing a certificate to correctional employees to carry firearms.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced. Further bills on second reading? Bills on first reading?
House Bill 2009, creating a new category of innovation in education grant program.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2435, authorizing Attorney General to prosecute violations of state criminal law recommended by the Commission on Special Investigations.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2446, Blue Alert Plan.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2509, clarifying that theft of a controlled substance is a felony.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2527, relating to forgery and other crimes concerning lottery tickets.
Bill will be advanced. Further bills on first reading? Leaves of absence. Remarks by members of the House. Remarks by members of the House. Gentleman from the 46th, Delegate Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the gentleman from the 45th, we had a good friend that passed away just in the recent days, Charles Wimpy Linger, and he served in the Vietnam War, and I'd just like to ask the House for a moment of silence.
All members and guests in the gallery will please rise for a moment of silence. Members and guests may be seated. Further remarks by members of the House. Introduction of guests. Miscellaneous. Gentleman from the 9th, Douglas Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have Dr. Today Andrew Ford of Logan, West Virginia.
Are there further introductions? If not, miscellaneous business. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move subject to announcement that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Lady from the 49th moves that subject to announcements, the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. on tomorrow, Thursday, January 24th. Are there announcements? Gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. for the DMAPS public budget hearing, and at 4 o'clock for the Public Service Commission budget hearing. Finance will meet immediately following the afternoon budget hearings, continuing the morning's agenda. The agenda is posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. The Committee on the Judiciary will continue the posted agenda upstairs in the committee room at 2 o'clock this afternoon. One more announcement, the subcommittee on House Bill 2003 will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the Judiciary Committee room, and an agenda to the extent that it's needed will be posted, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 21st, Delegate Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will resume the posted agenda today at 2 p.m. in the Education Committee room.
Gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Republican members on the Committee on Government Organization will caucus at 2 o'clock in the Chairman's office.
Gentleman from the 41st, Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. in room 215E. Republican members will caucus at 1:30 in the Chairman's office tomorrow.
Gentleman from the 17th, Delegate Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Seniors, Children, and Family Issues will meet tomorrow at 1 o'clock in Government Organization.
Gentleman from the 9th, Delegate Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two announcements. The Judiciary Subcommittee on House Bill 2467 will meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room. And also, the Committee on Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will meet tomorrow at 3:30 in the House Health Committee room.
Gentleman from the 1st, Delegate McGeehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security will meet this afternoon at 1 o'clock in the House Education room. The agenda is posted. Members of the committee, Republican caucus, up in the House Education at 12:45.
Gentleman from the 48th, Delegate Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Small Business, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Development will meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning in House Government Organization.
Gentleman from the 12th, Delegate Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Banking and Insurance will be 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and the Government Organizations Room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman 66, Delegate Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to let members know that the Speaker's Dinner will be held Tuesday, February 12th. Just wanted you to know that so that you can put that on your calendars. It's always a really enjoyable evening, and we'll certainly be letting you know the details of that coming up. But again, Tuesday, February 12th for the Speaker's Dinner. So thank you.
Lady from 32nd, Delegate Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic members of Health and Human Resources will caucus in room 230 East at 1:30 tomorrow.
Gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Caputo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The AFL-CIO Legislative Conference is in town, and they are hosting lunch for everyone immediately upon adjournment in the Cultural Center. Also, this evening, their annual reception will be at 6 p.m. this evening at the 4 Point Sheraton.
Are there further announcements? Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is a motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. And with those on the floor and the guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Chuck Kinder, who is the lay pastor in Charleston, West Virginia. And then please remain standing as we are led in the pledge by the senator from Wyoming, Mr. Kinder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's pray. In the rush of all the important business before us, we pause to acknowledge you, O Lord. We are reminded that the psalmist says, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord watch the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. We pray that you will watch over us as we build a better West Virginia. We pray especially for these men and women in the West Virginia Senate and the support staff that help them. We thank you for their talents that they bring to this task, their willingness to serve our citizens in this way. We pray that that we would seek your guidance and your leading to do the important work before them. We pray your blessing upon the 21 students of Mount Olive Bible College who received their four-year degrees at graduation ceremony yesterday. May this be the first of many. We pray for your peace and protection upon them all. We pray for unity among our leaders, a spirit of cooperation throughout the branches of government here at this important time. We ask your blessing on our governor and the citizens of West Virginia. And we pray that you would guide, lead, and direct the efforts of these elected representatives as they lay the foundation of our future steps. But most of all, we pray your will be done. Nothing more, nothing less, and nothing else. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. The senator from Wyoming County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will everyone in the Senate and the gallery please say the pledge to the greatest country in the world? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019.
The senator from Greenbrier requests unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guests. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. As guest of the senator from Greenbrier, we have Emma Osborne, Caitlin Ewart, Madison Richmond, and Noah Brown. If they would all stand and the Senate, please give them a warm welcome. Thank you. You may be seated. Further introductions, the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, I'm happy to announce our doc of the day. In the back of the chamber, Dr. Andrew Ford is there, and I'd like to introduce him from Logan. Thank you.
Further introductions, the senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Tucker and myself, we're pleased to have in the North Gallery today John Taylor, who's advocating for the AARP and the West Virginia Association of Retired School Employees. John, please make him welcome.
Further introductions. The senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure and the pleasure of my senior senator to welcome some very important guests today visiting the Senate. They're from Hope Inc., which is a nonprofit that does so much to discourage and help women who are victims of domestic violence. And if they'll stand, they're all from Clarksburg, Glenville, Weston, and Doddridge counties. We have Caitlin Wilston and Brittany Dunbar. Please make them feel welcome. Where are you?
The senator from Logan County.
Morning, Mr. President. On behalf of the senior senator from the 7th and myself, we have members from the Logan CAC here with us today. I think they're outside the chamber coming in momentarily. We have Brooke Honecker, Kristen Keene, and Beth Cook. And Miss Honecker holds another distinction. She's also my baby girl. We'll just sit and make them welcome.
The senior senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Cabell and myself, and on behalf of other members here, we'd like to recognize the West Virginia Athletic Trainers Association members that are here today, but in particular, I would like to mention Robert Chafin, that's from Spring Valley. And let me tell you a little story. My daughter, one of my daughters who was playing soccer was hurt, and we did not have an athletic trainer there. She went on, not only she played a little for a few more practices and actually tore her MCL and ACL. And if we had had an athletic trainer there, we wouldn't have had to go through that. We probably would have had only one surgery instead of the major one that we had. And I appreciate the fact that we have athletic trainers, and I really appreciate the fact that Robert Chafin is at Spring Valley today. If you would stand, and we'd welcome you.
Further introductions, the senator from Cabell County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my senior senator from the 5th, we have some educators here from Cabell County, and I'm not quite sure where they've landed in the gallery, but I would ask Adam Culver, Dana Parent, and Tess Jackson to please stand and be welcomed by the Senate.
Further introductions, the senator from Wyoming County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the gallery, we have Margita Mizaki, and I've been practicing that all morning. I know I butchered it again, but she came here from Germany in 1999 and is a small business owner. She became a U.S. citizen in January the 9th of 2017, and she is so proud of that. After visiting Germany recently and witnessing the political situation there, she decided to visit the capital and with the intent of seeking to serve her state and country by encouraging us to not only cherish the blessings of representative government, but to get involved herself in the political process. Please welcome her.
Further introductions, the junior senator from the 8th.
Good morning, Mr. President. On your behalf and on behalf of the senior senator from the 8th, I'd like to recognize, and if they could stand up, we have 20 apprentices, carpenter apprentices from 21 southern counties. That is, I guess there's a couple carpenters as well, representing the Keystone Mountain Lakes Council Local 439 in the South Gallery today. They're here with Mr. Luke Begovich and Delegate Scott Brewer. So if they could stand and be recognized, and if the Senate could make them feel welcome. Thank you.
The senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the rear of the gallery, we have Jefferson County resident and former delegate Tiffany Lawrence here to present a citation. Would the senators please make her feel welcome?
The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have with us some medical professionals today from the West Virginia Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They're a professional organization that is here in West Virginia. They help oversee programs such as WIC, SNAP. They work outpatient and inpatient in hospitals. They certainly help us in the ICU every day, helping to educate patients about the importance of diet and chronic disease states. If they wouldn't mind standing and be recognized, we have Meredith Chapman, Brooke Neeson-Sabat, Nettie Freshour, 8 WVU graduate students of Human Nutrition, and Peg Andrews. If you wouldn't mind standing and be recognized, let the Senate give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions, the senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Monroe, we've got several guests here today. I'd just like to ask that they all stand and be recognized together. First, we have Mr. Danny Gray, who's my neighbor in Ronsford, here advocating on behalf of the AARP today. We also have Kenosha Davenport and her staff from the Family Refuge Center in Lewisburg. If you all will please stand. And we also have Mr. Greg Mills here today, who's with our pages, representing Greenbrier West High School. He is their teacher and leading the student government, members of whom are here today. Will the Senate please make these folks from Greenbrier and Monroe County feel welcome?
Further introductions? Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2362, Ardella Miller Memorial Act.
Message will be received and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Further communications from the House?
No, sir.
Communications from the Executive?
There are none.
Reports from standing committees?
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 55 relating to driving privileges and requirements for persons under 18 and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 101, equalizing penalties for intimidating and retaliating against certain public officers and other persons, and reports back a committee substitute for same, and Senate Bill 124, creating felony offense for actions of cruelty to animals which causes serious injury or death of an animal, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 103 relating generally to public defender services and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received and the bill's original double committee reference be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 173, DHHR rule relating to medication-assisted treatment, office-based medication-assisted treatment, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
Report will be received under the bill's original double committee reference be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 178, Lottery Commission Rule relating to West Virginia Lottery Sports Wagering Rule, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Craig Blair, Chair.
Report will be received under the bill's original double committee reference be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 233 relating to age requirements for deputy sheriff and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Gregory L. Boso, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Bill 238, increasing fines for passing stopped school bus, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 241, permitting county court clerks scan certain documents in electronic form, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Gregory L. Boso, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 268, updating meaning of federal taxable income in West Virginia Corporation Net Income Tax Act, and Senate Bill 269, updating terms used in West Virginia Personal Income Tax Act, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Craig Blair, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 291, relating generally to survivor benefits for emergency response providers, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Gregory L. Boso, Chair.
Report will be received under the bill's original double committee reference, will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Bill 333, exempting automobiles 25 years or older from personal property taxes, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received and referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 4, naming U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Ray Blankenship Memorial Road, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 9, naming the U.S. Army Private First Class Winton L. Waits Memorial Bridge, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
Report will be received.
That's all I have, sir.
Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that Senate Bills 394 through 409 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
The junior senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill number 394 through Senate Bill 409 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Resolution 16 by Senators Stallings, Palumbo, Plymel, Beach, Jeffrey, Seipolt, Swope, Baldwin, and Hardesty, recognizing Daniel Boone, VFW, Post 5578 for service to community, state, and country.
The senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be put upon its adoption.
Senator from Boone County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 16, recognizing the Daniel Boone, VFW, Post 5578 for dedicated service to its community, state, and country.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? The senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to recognize this great group of hardworking people, veterans, and the auxiliary from Madison and Boone County. And at the same time as we recognize this group, realize, and I know you all realize, that in your own hometowns you have wonderful veterans organizations in the VFW and American Legion that have a huge impact on our communities. By being mentors, by doing all the public service that they do. This group was recognized nationally as being named an All-American Post, one of only 50 posts nationwide. under the leadership of Curtis Mayhorn and the Quartermaster Joe Golly. You know, for the last 60 years, they give an incredible amount of food to the less fortunate in our communities. They give fruit baskets to numerous individuals, including nursing homes and convalescent homes. They provide a scholarship to people graduating from a school in Boone County. They visit all Boone County schools, giving an Americanism program, providing senior high school graduates, again, in each county, a scholarship. With all that, and all they do, we absolutely, it's an honor to recognize them. And again, they're great mentors. And again, you can see that the auxiliary, you know, they really have a large role in this as well. So for all your work and efforts, not only helping us keep America free, but all you do in the community for us, I urge adoption of the resolution.
Further discussion? Not. The question for the Senate is adoption of resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the remarks from the senator from Boone be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. Senate will please come to order. Further resolutions?
Yes, sir. Senate Resolution 17 by Senators Ehlenfeld, Seipolt, Wolfel, Palumbo, Plymel, Beach, Stallings, Hamilton, Unger, Takubo, Boso, Jeffries, Lindsay, Klein, Swope, Baldwin, and Rucker, designating January 23, 2019 as Sexual and Domestic Violence Awareness Day.
The senator from Ohio County.
Mr. President, I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be put upon its adoption.
Senator from Ohio County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 17, designating January 23, 2019 as Sexual and Domestic Violence Awareness Day at the Legislature.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of this resolution, and I'm proud that my first speech on this Senate floor is about this issue, such an important issue to me and to all of our special guests who are about to join us here on the Senate floor. I spent 20 years as a state and federal prosecutor and handled everything from speeding tickets to homicides, but some of the most important and toughest cases that I worked on over the years involved domestic violence and sexual assault. We've got great police officers in the state, local, county, and state, and we're fortunate that they respond and investigate those cases. And we've got great prosecutors who do the job in the courtroom. But today I want to shine a special light upon victim advocates who do often unseen work behind the scenes supporting victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. Without these advocates, victims would not be able to navigate the criminal justice system, which is a very complicated web, especially for someone who has suffered that kind of trauma. They wouldn't be able to find safety from their abusers. They wouldn't be able to start their lives anew without the help of advocates for both domestic violence and sexual assault. We have 14 licensed domestic violence shelters in our state. They served in the last fiscal year over 14,000 people. Of those domestic violence shelters, some of them also provide rape crisis services as well as prevention programming to our youth. I want to specifically highlight the West Virginia Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the West Virginia Foundation for Rape Information and Services. Those two groups lead the statewide efforts. They oversee our shelters, they oversee our advocates, they provide the framework for the important work that's done. They help to provide safe space for victims, and they help individuals, children, and families to build lives that are free from violence. As someone who has personally worked with these kinds of cases and who has worked with countless victims, both young and old, I can tell you how critically important, from firsthand experience, the work that these people do is to our state. We need them desperately, and they need the full support of this body. And so the more that we can do, whether it's passing a resolution here on this floor or providing financial support and other administrative support, we need to do that for these folks. And so with all of that, Mr. President, I urge the passing of this resolution.
Is there further discussion? The senator from Logan County.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. This issue is near and dear to me as my daughter has chosen this career path as well. Let me tell you what these people provide. They provide a voice to the voiceless, and they provide hope to the hopeless. And I applaud their efforts today, and we do need, as the senator from Ohio stated, we need to get behind these people and the services they provide. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the resolution adopted. Junior Senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the comments made by the senators from Ohio and the senator from Logan be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess to present this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Further resolutions? Recognize the senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent. The Senate return to the second order of business.
Is there objection? Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and alert the body, the members of the Senate, to the fact that we have among us a former member, although I don't know, oh, he's moving. He's on the move. A former member of this body, former member of the Congress of the United States, and a current justice of the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals, Evan Jenkins.
Further introductions? The senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. To my gallery to my right is Kate Flack. She's the Executive Director of the West Virginia Child Advocacy Network. If Kate would stand, the Senate give her a warm welcome.
Further introductions. Resolutions.
Senate Resolution 18 by Senators Prezioso, Seipolt, Palumbo, Plymel, Beach, Stallings, Unger, Takubo, Jeffries, Swope, and Baldwin, recognizing 20th anniversary of the James Tiger Morton Catastrophic Illness Fund.
Senator from Marion County.
I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be put upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. The clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 18, recognizing the 20th anniversary of the James Tiger Morton Catastrophic Illness Fund.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? Is there discussion? The senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we are recognizing the anniversary of the James Tiger Morton Catastrophic Illness Fund. And today I have the honor and privilege of presenting to you the memory of a man who is truly a West Virginia icon and a person who is behind this great program that helps many West Virginians. For those of you that have known James Tiger Morton, he had an illustrious career as a minister, teacher, coach, principal, and special assistant to the governor's office. He also served as a legislative liaison and ombudsman for what now is the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources. For those of you who had the privilege of working with Tiger and knowing Tiger, he formed lasting relationships with people. He was a genuine West Virginian, and he was more than a friend to people. He was a mentor. He brought out the best in every one of us. He earned the respect and admiration from colleagues throughout this body and throughout West Virginia, and governors and legislators. And I know many in this body have served with Tiger. Tiger wasn't a legislator. He worked in the legislature, and to know him was to love him. He received many distinguished awards, and he had a deep interest in children's well-being. He was, in my estimation, the epitome of a true humanitarian. He helped West Virginians in need by arranging for medical transplants, assisting with application for benefits, and everything in between. Through his selfless devotion and compassion, resulted in the creation of the James Tiger Morton Catastrophic Illness Fund in 1999 during the 74th regular session of the West Virginia Legislature. Tiger's contributions were so valued that his body laid in state in the Capitol upon his passing. James Tiger Morton Catastrophic Illness Commission perpetuates his valuable legacy by providing a source of economic assistance outside the scope of his existing public programs to West Virginians facing catastrophic illness and saving many lives. This is the 20th anniversary of the James Tiger Morton Catastrophic Illness Fund, and the James Tiger Morton Catastrophic Illness Commission continues to make a difference in the lives of West Virginians. Mr. President, I humbly urge the adoption of this resolution.
Further discussion. Not the question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the comments made by the senator from Marion be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. Senate will please come to order. Further resolutions.
Senate Resolution 19 by Senators Blair, Unger, Beach, Seipolt, Palumbo, Plymel, Stallings, Hamilton, Takubo, Hardesty, Boso, Jeffries, and Maynard, designating January 23, 2019 as West Virginia for Broadband Day at the Capitol.
The senior senator from the 5th.
Question you ask to consent the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 19 designating January 23, 2019 as West Virginia for Broadband Day at the Capitol.
Question for the Senate is adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senior senator from the 15th, who we both are on the Broadband Council, I'd like to say a few words about what this body and the body across the aisle has done over the last couple of years. You know, starting with Senate Bill 638, that really established a benchmark for where we could go. And the preceding bills of that have come from the House, and we have, as we call it, perfected them in the Senate. But the state of West Virginia, and I was meeting with Catherine DeWitt, who's with the Pew Charitable Trust. And Catherine DeWitt, we talked about the progress that West Virginia's made, not only from a policy standpoint, but for what we're trying to do with the Broadband Enhancement Council and the leadership of Rob Hinton and very many things like that. But I told her, I said, you should look at the policies, you should look at the things that we're doing. I think we're leading the country. And, of course, they get that from every state and everything. So I was in a conference in October in D.C., and she was there, and she hunted me down and not stalked, hunted me down, and said, let me just tell you something. You're exactly right. You all have made more progress in the speed test and the different things that you're doing from the Broadband Enhancement Council. You are our leaders in the country. So to know where we've gone, where we were, and where we are now, it's light years. And I really think that this is a great day that we should be talking about broadband and talking about what it means to not only connecting our citizens, but this is telemedicine, telehealth, this is schools, libraries, it's everything that we talk about in anchor institutions. It's the wave of the future, and we're ahead of this country in this as a state. Thank you.
Further discussion? Not the senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry to disappoint you, but if I wouldn't get up and speak on broadband, my co-senator would be disappointed in me. I've been fighting broadband. This is 7 years. That's what I came to when I started for the House. That was my number one thing on the agenda, and I like to tell people I was broadband when broadband wasn't cool. So I'm glad to finally see that broadband is becoming cool, because I honestly believe without us improving our broadband, we're not going to prosper educationally or economically until we catch up with the rest of the country. And so I'm proud to stand up and support this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent for the remarks from the senior senator from the 5th and the senator from Tucker be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Mr. President, I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. Senate will please come to order. Are there further resolutions?
No, sir.
Motions? Petitions?
There are none.
Unfinished business?
Senate Concurrent Resolution 15, studying feasibility of requiring all state agencies that collect fees and fines to deposit those funds in General Revenue Fund.
Resolution will be referred to Committee on Finance. Further unfinished business?
No, sir.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 1, increasing access to career education and workforce training. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires the establishment of advanced career education programs and creates the West Virginia Invest Grant Program. ACE programs require community and technical colleges and career education centers, county boards of education, or both, to establish partnerships in order to create programs. These programs would be available to public, non-public, and homeschool students and begin when a student is in high school and end with the student obtaining a credential or an associate degree awarded by a community and technical college. The goal is certification or an associate degree or certification that has been determined to satisfy an area of workforce need as determined by the Department of Commerce. The ACE program is facilitated by the State Superintendent and the Chancellor of the Council for Community and Technical College Education, and they are required to jointly promulgate guidelines for the administration of the ACE programs. This bill provides that beginning with the 2021 fiscal year, any appropriation by the legislature to support and or alleviate the cost to citizens in this state to obtain advanced certifications and associate degrees can only be distributed to those community and technical colleges that form one or more ACE partnerships. The second component of the bill is the West Virginia Invest Grant Program. The Vice Chancellor for Administration is required to administer this program. This program requires the Council to award grants pursuant to certain specified requirements, including the requirement that the maximum amount of the grant is the cost of tuition charged to all students for coursework leading to completion of the chosen associate degree or certificate, less all other state and federal aid for which the student is eligible. The bill establishes eligibility requirements for the grant, renewal qualifications for the grant, and requires each grant recipient to enter into an agreement which requires repayment of any amount of the grant awarded to the recipient in whole or part if a recipient chooses to reside outside the state within 2 years following obtainment of the degree or certificate. The bill also provides exceptions to repayment. Lastly, the bill creates the West Virginia Invest Fund, which is to be expended for the purpose of administering the West Virginia Invest Grant Program. The goal of this bill is to expand opportunities and getting West Virginians into jobs, and not just any jobs, but high-paying jobs, so they can provide for their families and improve their lives. I urge passage of the bill.
Further discussion, the senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of Senate Bill 1. I truly, honestly believe that the education system that we have is the foundation of this country. I believe anything we do to strengthen our higher education system, to provide individuals the opportunity to obtain a higher education degree, to obtain a skill or some certification that gives them the opportunity to work in the workforce and be productive citizens in the state of West Virginia, not only helps our state, it helps families, it attracts businesses, and I applaud the efforts of this body by taking the initiative and putting this bill forth, and I urge all to support the bill.
Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of this. Right now, there is a confluence of energy coming together related to the different plans in education. You have the ESSA plan, which is Every Student Succeeds Act. That also was the No Child Left Behind, now the new ESSA plan. And with that, and with the Perkins Act that was passed a couple years ago and what is called WIOA, W-O-I-I-A, all three of those acts have said they have to work together. And they have to work together for workforce. They have to have a common point that they all meet. And that common point is exactly what's in this bill. That's why it's important to be talking about the next steps, as we did yesterday. Everybody says, okay, those are good amendments, but those are the next steps. Well, the next steps are going to be the important next steps, because you're going to have community and technical colleges, you'll have the CTE, public education, and you'll have Workforce Investment Act, the workforce group working together. We have to have all these things working together to get where we need to on workforce participation. So all of these elements coming together is the time now for this state to move forward. This is a good first step, and I look forward to working with you on the next ones.
Further discussion. Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last year, I got up on this floor and gave a big, passionate speech to this, and I thought that this bill would have been completed by now. But here we are today, and I call this bill now, I got a nickname for it, and I've used it for a good while, last dollar in. When I talk about this, that's how I refer to it. I just call it last dollar in. Look, I don't want to explain this without going, I don't want to go down the path of last year is what I'm trying to get at here. We know what this bill is going to do. It is not an entitlement in any way. In fact, it's an investment. It's an investment in the people of West Virginia and people in West Virginia like me. It's a big deal. Look, businesses are looking, they got a checklist of different things that they're looking for, and we're trying to knock down each and every one of those barriers. But one of the ones that we're trying to knock down is demonstrating to business that would potentially locate here or expand, is that we've got an educated, drug-free workforce. This bill, very much so, last dollar in, very much so, helps with that in a big way. And the money that we're spending out on the front side to be able to implement this will be saved on the back side by increased income tax collections, because instead of them being on one entitlement or another, whether it's welfare, food stamps, unemployment, the list goes on that. No, they turn into taxpayers. Instead of being tax takers, they turn into taxpayers. That's a win for the state of West Virginia. That's a win for the ability for those that are in less situations or poorer situations to be able to utilize this as well into the future. You don't have to have a certain grade point average, or I would have never been able to apply for that. This gets me there. It allows people like myself to be able to succeed in this state, and businesses to succeed in this state, which helps us over the overall message that we're trying to do. And that is grow the fiscal pie in the state of West Virginia. Instead of fighting over a shrinking pie, we're going to grow the pie, and this is a key component to doing that, Mr. President. A key component to doing it. More than anything, though, it helps the students in secondary education as well as those that are past that on the post-secondary. In such a way that when we have the opioid crisis and everything, and I've got to say this, and I didn't want to, but I'm going to. There's a direct correlation with boredom in the classroom, in the drug usage, tobacco, alcohol, and all the other ills that we have when you get into the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade levels. And if you take people like myself, and I use this over and over, like Moby Dick and Old Man in the Sea, I hated it. I didn't want to read that. But if you'd have given me a tech manual on how to learn how to do refrigeration or electrical or whatever else it may be, I I would have read it from cover to cover probably twice. There are multiple paths of education in this state because we have multiple types of people, personalities from a very young age moving through. This bill, Mr. President, addresses all those. And I'll close with this. This bill helps West Virginians help themselves by the last dollar in, and I can't wait to press the button on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. The senator from Logan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I applaud your efforts on this bill. I've heard others say that it's an entitlement program. I cannot fathom how there's a correlation between this bill and entitlement. This is an investment in the youth of this state. This is an opportunity to change the status quo, to put more people on a path of prosperity. And I wholeheartedly support this bill and your efforts in it. Thank you very much.
Further discussion. The senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I've been on a number of mission trips where we've gone into third world countries, and they were looking for us to come and work to be able to provide for them. One of the things that I learned, though, is a philosophy that is built within this particular piece of legislation. And that analogy was this. You can go and you can feed people fish, and you have to do it every day. But you can train them to fish for themselves, and they'll feed themselves for a lifetime. This particular piece of legislation does just exactly that. This is an investment for West Virginia for perpetuity. Thank you.
Further discussion. Not question before the Senate is shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will please communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 18 relating to crimes committed on state capitol complex. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 18 amends a single section of the state code. It is section 19 of Article 6, Chapter 51, and it relates to the possession of firearms in automobiles on the Capitol grounds, Capitol parking lot. Under current law, it's permissible to have a firearm in your car if it's locked away in a motor vehicle at the Capitol complex, if the vehicle is locked and the weapon is out of normal view, if the person whose weapon it is has a valid current concealed weapons permit. Under this bill, the requirement of having a concealed weapons permit is stricken, and so the only prohibition will be prohibition for people who are prohibited generally under federal law or state law from the possession of weapons generally. Be happy to try to answer questions. Otherwise, I urge passage.
Further discussion? Not. Question before the Senate is shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Trump moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 18 be made effective upon passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 255 relating to Emergency Medical Services Advisory Committee. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? There's a discussion. The senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is an honor to present this particular bill. The bill reconstitutes the Emergency Medical Services Advisory Council to include 3 more members, which include 3 persons from the general public who would be voting members. The bill also reformats some provisions and clarifies the appointment of other members. The bill passed last session, but was vetoed by the governor. The CS before you, the committee substitute before you, changes the bill as introduced to make the citizen members voting instead of non-voting. I urge passage of the bill.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Not all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 354, expiring funds to balance of Auditor's Office, Chief Inspector's Fund. Third reading of the bill.
The question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 354 is a supplemental appropriation requested by the State Auditor's Office. The supplemental would expire $1.5 million from the Auditor's Office's Securities Regulation Fund and reappropriate them to the Auditor's Office Chief Inspector Fund. The need for this supplement has arisen due to the amnesty program that was authorized by the Legislature for fiscal year 2014. This program has granted forgiveness of just over $740,000 in receivable balances, and this combined with the current accounts receivable balance of $381,714, which is unlikely to be collected, and over $560,000 in costs not currently covered related to fraud and fraud allegations, which are non-payers, and has created the shortfall, and this in turn is the need for the supplement. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Nope. Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The senior senator from, junior senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be made effective upon passage. On question unanimous consent, that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Are there further bills on third reading?
No, sir.
Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 223, authorizing Department of Commerce promulgate legislative rules. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Trump moved to amend the bill on page 2, section 2, line 3 by striking out the words rules and regulations and inserting in lieu thereof the word rule, and on page 2, section 2, line 8 by striking out the words rule and regulations and inserting in lieu thereof the word rule.
The question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment. Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was just so that we could avoid having everyone tell me that it took longer for me to explain it than it would be if we just had the clerk read it. It is a technical correction, substituting the singular for the plural where it's appropriate. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 253, protecting consumers purchase renewal and continuous service offers. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, excuse me. If not, the bill will be engrossed to advance to third reading. Further bills on second reading?
No, sir.
Bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 258, establishing common law veil piercing claims not be used to impose personal liability. First reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. Introduction of guest. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members of the Senate. The junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I regret to inform the body that we have had a former member of this body pass away here in the past, I believe it was today, it may have been yesterday, I'm just finding this out. He's a former senator from District 4 out of Mason County. Mike Shaw has passed. Mr. Shaw, he served in the House of Delegates. He was elected into the House of Delegates in 1972 and served 2 years there. He also served in the Senate from 1979 to 1982 and 1985 to 1988 for a total of about 8 years. So he will be having services in Point Pleasant at 1:30. I'm still waiting to get the information. I'll make sure that we have it at the Senate Clerk's office so that anybody that's interested in attending that can attend. So thank you.
Further remarks. The senator from Cabell County.
Let me also add to that he was a member of the Public Service Commission for some time and a person of great wit and intelligence, and he'll be missed.
Further remarks? Not. Miscellaneous business. Excuse me. Recognize the senior senator from the 6th under remarks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, I left a note on everyone's desk here about a 84th Legislature trail ride, and it's some individuals in the area in a Jeep club that wants to welcome a seat in their Jeep to the legislators here to see what motorized off-road vehicle trail rides are like. It is not this coming Saturday, but Saturday after next, February 2nd. His email and cell phone numbers on there if you want to select your seat in one of the Jeeps. We're going to be meeting out here in the fountain area behind the Capitol at 10:30. So the information's on there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Miscellaneous business. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to return to the 12th order of business.
The senator may proceed under remarks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two things. Number one, I'd ask unanimous consent that the comments made by the senators from Jefferson, Marion, the senior senator from the 5th, the senior senator from the 15th, senator from Logan, senator from Nicholas regarding Senate Bill 1 be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. On that note, I would also like to invite all the members of the Senate immediately following session. There will be a press conference regarding Senate Bill 1. I'd like to invite all those who would like to attend that conference. It'll be held right outside the chamber.
Miscellaneous business. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow, January 24th at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your full committee on finance will meet today at 3 p.m. at 461M, and we got the DHHR up there doing a budget presentation. There's no bills running today.
Further announcements. The senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Education will be meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. in room 451M.
Senator from Morgan County. The agenda will be posted. The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee on the judiciary will meet today at 3 o'clock p.m. in the Judiciary Committee room in the West Wing.
A senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development will meet today at 2 p.m., 208 West. The agenda was posted yesterday. Bring your computers.
The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Health will meet tomorrow, 1 o'clock, 451M, and the agenda will be posted this afternoon.
Senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Economic Development will meet today at 1 p.m. in 208 West.
Senator from Wood County.
President, your Committee on Pensions will not meet today, and we plan on having a good agenda next week. Thank you.
Further announcements. The Senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. As witnessed this morning from the gallery, we do have the AFL-CIO in town today for their annual legislative conference. They're meeting at the Cultural Center, and each and every one of us are invited to lunch immediately following session.
Senior Senator from the 15th.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. When I did my announcement, I failed to announce the 9:30 meeting for tomorrow morning as well for your Committee on Finance.
Room 2, Finance Committee room, 9 o'clock, 9:30?
9:30, 461M.
Okay. Further announcements. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 corrections to my former announcement. It should be 11 a.m. And number 2, the conference, I believe, is taking place at 12:30, so there will be a 15-minute break if senators need to do so.
Further announcements. Not the question before the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.